All right, welcome back to Vuln Vibes, everyone. It's WP Safe Block Time.
Yes.
You know the part of the show where we really get down into how to keep WordPress sites safe?
Yeah.
And I know you all know this stuff already.
Mm.
But we're going to skip all that basic 101 stuff today and really jump into some intel that you can actually use. So today we're going to do a deep dive into some recent WordPress plugin vulnerabilities. But not just any vulnerabilities,
Right.
high and critical ones.
Right.
And we're not going to just go through a list of, CVE numbers or anything. What we're going to do is we're going to do some trend spotting.
Okay.
We're going to figure out what these vulnerabilities tell us about how attackers are thinking.
Right.
And maybe more importantly, how you can stay ahead of the game.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting about these vulnerabilities is that they're not like these super sophisticated zero-day exploits. They really highlight a shift in strategy. Attackers are exploiting trust in these systems. They're looking for easy wins. And they're understanding that even with limited access, they can still do a lot of damage.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
Our first trend that we're going to talk about takes us right to the HT Mega plugin.
Yeah.
A plugin that I'm sure we all know and maybe even love.
Yeah, definitely.
But seriously, this plugin has a massive user base.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why this stored cross-site scripting, XSS vulnerability, is so concerning.
Yeah.
So can you break down for us why this attack vector is still so effective?
Yeah. It really comes down to that element of surprise. You have this plugin, you trust it, it's adding all these cool features to your site.
Right.
But what happens when an attacker injects malicious code into that plugin itself? Well, now every time somebody visits a page using that plugin, that code executes. It's like hiding a nasty surprise in a birthday cake. You're not expecting it, which makes it even more effective.
Yeah, nobody wants those kinds of sprinkles. But for our listeners out there, what does this actually mean for them? Like, we all use plugins, right?
Right.
So how do we avoid falling into this trap?
I think a deep understanding of plugin permissions is really crucial here. So before you even think about installing a plugin, you need to understand what it can access, what it can modify.
Right.
Because even if it's a popular plugin, even if it's well maintained, those permissions, if abused, can become a backdoor.
Yes.
And we all know what happens when you leave a backdoor open.
Yeah, that's not good.
Not good.
All right, so let's move on to trend number 2. This one is all about the easy in. And we're going to illustrate this by talking about the WP Food Bakery plugin vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
This one's interesting because it basically allowed attackers to just walk right in and gain admin access during the registration process. Have you ever seen anything like this before?
I think what's so striking about this vulnerability is that it really shows how important security basics are. It wasn't some complex exploit or anything. It was a simple lack of validation during user registration. Okay. It's almost like the developers left a sticky note on the login page with the admin password.
Well, that brings up a really important point for everyone listening. No matter how secure the rest of your site is, if you have weaknesses in your registration process,
right,
like leaving your front door wide open.
Yeah.
So what steps can our listeners take to make sure they're not making it too easy on these attackers?
Input validation. That's first and foremost. Every single piece of data that a user enters during registration needs to be checked. It needs to be sanitized. And it needs to be validated. Okay. You need to be absolutely sure that what's being submitted is what you're expecting. No funny business. And beyond that, regular security audits are a must, especially for plugins that are handling sensitive information like user data.
So secure those doors and windows, folks.
Exactly.
All right, so our final trend might surprise you.
Okay.
Because it really highlights how dangerous it can be to underestimate seemingly low-level access. We're talking about the Zox News plugin, where even a subscriber role could be used to wreak havoc. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, wait, a subscriber? What damage could they possibly do? But as we all know in the security world, never underestimate a determined attacker.
Right.
So what made this particular vulnerability so dangerous?
Well, the danger here was that there were missing capability checks within the plugin. So, even though a subscriber role is usually pretty limited in terms of what they can do on a website, this vulnerability allowed them to bypass those limitations and manipulate certain options within the plugin.
Okay.
And this could potentially lead to gaining admin access or even causing a denial of service attack.
So it's like you think you have Fort Knox level security.
Yeah.
But you left the key under the flower pot.
Yeah.
Just a stark reminder that securing your site isn't just about focusing on those high-level threats. It's also about understanding that even the smallest user roles can be exploited.
Right.
If there are weaknesses in the system.
And I think what all three of these trends highlight is the fact that security isn't just about reacting to these vulnerabilities. It's about understanding how these attackers think. They're not always looking for the most complex way in. Sometimes they're relying on us overlooking the basics, leaving those easy entry points open, and underestimating the power of even the lowest level user.
So it's all about thinking like the enemy, right? Knowing their tactics, understanding their motivations, and then building your defenses accordingly. Well, that's a wrap for today's WP Safe block. Hopefully this has given you some things to think about. As always, stay vigilant, stay informed, and keep those WordPress sites locked down